Okay, excellent. Thank you for coming today to our fireside chat with Stefano McGee and Celeste Mergens, our D2 Galaxy Rising conference speakers, coming to us in person, where you could actually shake their hand on May the 4th in Bellevue at the Meydenbauer. We cannot wait to see you there as well. And to lead us through this conversation, I'd like to invite not only our education chair for our conference, but also our esteemed MC and beloved District 2 Toastmaster, Rebecca Murray. Rebecca, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Yes, my pleasure, Sarah. Thank you so much. And it is my great pleasure to introduce one of our keynoters at the conference. Actually, he'll be opening our conference, so you can see him there in 3 dimensions. Today, only 1 dimension, but it's still a great dimension. Stefano McGee. He is Toastmasters International first vice president. Joined Toastmasters in 2005. That's almost 20 years ago. Is that right? Do I have my math right? He's held just about every leadership role in Toastmasters at least one time, and he is well on his way to becoming international president. We're so excited about that. When he's not Toastmastering, Stefano is Development, Operations, and Infrastructure Director for Harvard Business Publishing. We'll learn a little bit more about what he does there. And I absolutely loved learning, Stefano, about your family and how Toastmasters has become a part of your family, that your wife, Jennifer, has been in Toastmasters for 24 years, and you have been married to Jennifer for 24 years. There's a story there that we're going to find out. Your teenage son, Tucker, also involved in Toastmasters, has been to 5 international conventions, and I'm a little bit jealous of that. Welcome, Stefano.
Thank you, Rebecca. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yes, let's get on with our fireside chat and a few questions that I received from audience members and a couple of questions from Rebecca Murray. The first one is, I'm intrigued by this fact that Jennifer, your wife, has been a Toastmaster longer than you. Do I have that right? Can you tell me, was she instrumental in inviting you to Toastmasters, or how did that happen?
Instrumental is probably underselling it, Rebecca. Probably underselling it. When she joined Toastmasters, she was recommended to join it from her place of work because she was going to be giving presentations. Sounds like a pretty common story. And so she joined. She was a member for 5 years before I joined. And every time she went to a Toastmasters meeting, I got the house to myself. So I sat and played video games. And let me tell you, Rebecca, it was glorious. I played so many fun video games, Call of Duty, you name it. I think Medal of Honor might have been out back then. Oh, it was great. But then she started harassing me about, hey, it's guest night and I need to bring a guest. I'm like, I don't want to go to your cult. And she says, yeah, no, I need to have a guest come. And so eventually I started going, and I think I went to one meeting and I'm like, oh, that was fun. You want to come to the next one? No, I'm good. But then she invited me again for the next guest night, and I started going regularly. I think I was a guest for about 6 months, and I'd taken almost every speaking role except for speaker, and knew more than some of the new members about what was going on in the club. Eventually they said, Stefano, on the next meeting, we want you to be a speaker. And I'm like, oh, cool. It's like, but you're going to have to pay. And I said, oh, okay. And so they got me. It took a while, but they finally got me. That's how I joined Toastmasters, because my wife needed a guest for guest night.
Yeah. So in other words, you drank the Kool-Aid. Congratulations.
I was forced the Kool-Aid, and it was great.
Yeah, it's good Kool-Aid. It truly is. we wanted to know, Sarah and I were talking this morning about you in a very, very good way. I don't know if your ears were burning, about the trajectory one is on when they are making their way to international president. So you are, is it your first vice president? And then what do you go to second, third, or is it the other way? Can you explain that to us?
So if anyone out there is familiar with the military, it runs in the same way. It's second vice president, that's what I am now, then first vice president, then president-elect, then international president. And the high level is it takes you a while to figure out what you need to do as an international president. So every year you're learning a different aspect of the job until you get to international president, where you understand, yeah, I know what I need to do for this. So it's been a very good learning experience. I mean, doing a lot of things like this as well, but that's what it's about. Is it's about getting very comfortable with the job and what's going to be expected of you for that year.
Yes. So you have 2 more years, is that right, until you become international president?
I have the rest of this year, which ends in August, then first vice president, and then president-elect. So a little over 2 years.
Okay, that's great. Well, this is a great segue to tie in your military experience. You mentioned that there are a lot of parallels between your experience in the military as well as Toastmasters and how we work. Can you explain that and tell us how those two thoughts intersect?
It's interesting that you brought that up, Rebecca, because many people are like, oh, the military and Toastmasters have nothing in common. It's like, you just tell people what to do in the military. And I said, yes, in battle we do. When we're being shot at, yes, but most of the time we'd like to not be shot at. And so then there's a lot of similarities, because in today's military, I just left in 2019, people ask a lot more questions than they used to. They wanted to know the why behind things. They respect leaders that actually get down and do the work that needs to be done with them. As an early on as a second lieutenant, see, that was the first officer role, second lieutenant, second vice president. I did things that were not necessarily expected. I would go out into aircraft hangars and pull cables through large dust bunnies and things left behind from years gone by. And it didn't bother me, because that's what my folks were doing. I wanted to be aware of what was going on. I need to get out down there and do it, so that you could say, oh, I understand this. I see why there's some difficulty. So there's that aspect of things. Another unique aspect of the military is that when you're in charge, when you're leading, the people that work for you, you need to know them as whole people. It's not like in a regular 9-to-5 job where you have a resource that comes in and maybe you greet them and say, hello, Sarah, I hope you're doing well today. How's that report going? It's, as an officer, I made it to lieutenant colonel, you really had to know about your people, their personal challenges, their spouses, their children. How is everything going? Because all of those things affect the whole person. It's the same in Toastmasters. The best teams have leaders that really get to know their people, what makes their people tick, not because they're psychologists, but because understanding their people helps better motivate and understand when things aren't going well and how to deal with that. So that's just a few ways that I think the military and the Toastmasters, as you said, cross up.
Yes. Well, one more question along those lines. I have a son who's in the military. He's just become a master sergeant in the Marine Corps. And they recorded when he was given that designation, he had to give a speech. And I was so impressed by his speaking ability. So do you, in the military, in order to move up, is that one of the skills that you generally learn, how to become a better speaker?
Sadly, no.
Oh.
That is not. I think that the ones that are able to find ways to speak better and present better, they're the ones that do better. There's actually a line in the keynote that you'll hear in just about a month and a half time, where the thing that I learned from the military is if the general falls asleep during your presentation, your message is lost. So how do you engage with the people that need to hear the message that you're talking about?
Yeah.
And that was where you started to understand why public speaking and presentation skills are important. But I don't remember ever getting taught that. Usually what I do is I say Toastmasters. I joined about 6 years in from the military. it helped me rise even faster through the military ranks, because not a lot of people can communicate and really draw in people to say, this is what we're trying to do, this is why it matters. So they go together well, better than you might think.
Yeah. So it set you apart. It set you apart from a lot of people, and you made that rise quicker.
Yes. So for
Yes.
sure, Toastmasters was a part of that.
I love that. We did get a couple of questions for you in advance of today. I'd like to read the first one by Lori Shapiro, PDD. As Toastmasters begins its 100-year celebration, what are you most proud of this organization for achieving?
Wow. It's a very basic thing that's hard to count, but it exists. Some might call it faith, but that's not what I'm getting at. But if you all have experienced somebody, maybe yourself, that is better, that has been successful because of Toastmasters, you only need one. If you consider the millions of people that have gone through our program over the last 100 years, think about what a profound impact and the large number of people that we've had a positive impact on. And that makes me very proud to be a part of this organization, because we've all seen it. I haven't seen it all with my own eyes, but I've seen plenty of other people who have seen other things all together. Think about the profound impact, the lives that this organization has changed over the last 100 years. People have gotten promotions. There are people that are leading countries. They're in the United States political government, say what you will, but they're doing a lot of wonderful things, even in their own communities, running, what do you call it there? Running home, what do they call that? Well, I have condo associations.
Oh, yeah, right.
Small things and big things that are running better because they've gone through Toastmasters. And we don't take responsibility for that enough. That's what I'm the most proud of our organization.
Yeah, excellent. We're back this time with my good friend, Celeste Mergens, who we met 2 years ago, 3 years ago now.
Already, yeah.
We were both speakers at a Rotary District Conference and became members of what I call the Mutual Admiration Society.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So we've spent some time together. We have plans to do things together. In fact, even after our session today, we're going to do something fun together, aren't we?
Definitely.
When I heard Celeste speak, not only her manner in speaking and delivering her message, but what she shared with us, I was moved to tears. And I will never forget some of those images that you showed us of Days for Girls and the transformation that Celeste, along with her team, has helped to create in the world. You'll be hearing more about that today. It opened my eyes to realities I didn't even know existed. Days for Girls is a global award-winning organization that has reached 3 million women and girls in 143 countries. And it's interesting because Toastmasters is in 145 countries.
Oh, the race is on.
The race is on. Yeah. Let's do both. I know. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
It is. Celeste is a specialist in women's health and equity, building teams and bridging cultural divides. She has been featured in Oprah's O Magazine and in Forbes Magazine, just to name a few. The list goes on of the awards you've won and the places that Celeste has been featured. Last year, Celeste published her book, The Power of Days, which has become a bestseller. It will be on Oprah's book reading list. And I am reading it right now. It's a story of resilience, equity, a fight for justice and
women's equity.
And your story.
Yes.
Your story of that same fight. I am just so pleased to have you in my studio today.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here.
Such a pleasure. We have many questions that for Celeste, things that we will need to know. And let's start with this big one. The surprising taboo question that changed the direction of your life and was a catalyst for launching the global movement for equity and health Days for Girls. Tell us about that taboo question.
Oh, okay. So imagine one of my specialties is sustainable development. So I was at an orphanage helping and trying to make them more sustainably thrive. And then I was working on those kind of questions. And then one night.
And can you tell us, it was ovens? What was it?
Yes.
Yes.
So
Yeah. Can you?
Are you familiar with the stovepipe ovens? They're a special kind of oven that's just to describe it, that creates an opportunity to use very little to burn hot. So instead of spending a lot of money on wood, it's very scarce in the slums of Kibera, they were able to buy sawdust for like $11 a day and feed 200 at the time, it was up to 420 kids. And so they needed 2 of these big rocket stoves is what they're called. And in that process of creating more ability to pay less, so you have more ability to pay for food, those were the kind of things I was focusing on. So imagine the question that came to mind one day when I was really focused on how to feed them, because there had been post-election violence, 500,000 people displaced in this orphanage, swelled to 1,400 children, and they didn't have what they needed for food. I happened to have experienced living a life that was scarce for food when I was a child. And so I know what that feels like. I wanted so badly to help. And then woke up at 2:30 in the morning. Have you asked what they're doing for feminine hygiene? That was the question. Really literally went, ran to the computer to ask, didn't expect an immediate answer. They didn't have smartphones everywhere back then, and got an immediate answer. And all it said in the email was nothing. They wait in their rooms. It turned out they were sitting on pieces of cardboard. And that question sent me off on a track I never saw coming. And when I was a little girl, I wanted to be a scientist, an engineer, a musician, or a writer. Never had on my list world advocate for menstrual health. But it turns out it was a key to reversing cycles of poverty and violence against women. Who would have guessed?
Yes, yes. So there you are in Africa, focused on food, oven, sustainability. You're sleeping one night back in your bed in the United States. This question pops in. What are these girls? This orphanage is packed.
Oh,
Way too many kids in this orphanage to really take care of. There are, multiple kids sleeping in beds. And all of a sudden, this question just pops out of nowhere. What are the girls doing for menstruation?
yes.
And you got out of bed, Googled it, got or emailed somebody, got an answer back. They're doing nothing at all. These girls are sitting. This is when I heard this in the conference. This is what really moved me more than anything. These girls would have a period and have to sit on a piece of cardboard in their bed in the orphanage for days.
Yes.
Before they could go back to school. And school was the one thing that would change or could change their future.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when you're an orphan and you're choosing between being able to go to school or it turned out being exploited in exchange for a single disposable pad, what choice did they have?
Yes.
And that's what I learned when I got there. They said, thank you so much, because before you came, we had to let them use us if we wanted to leave the room and go to class.
Yes. And use us, meaning the men in the orphanage who were taking advantage of these young girls in exchange for like a pad, a menstrual pad. Yeah.
And that was the moment Days for Girls was born. I knew we had to do something. What I didn't know was that all around the world, people are losing opportunity for their days, for their strength, for education, health, all over the world. And today we've reached more than 3.2 million in 145 countries. So it's universal. And the best part is, this is something we can change in our life. There are a lot of things that are hard to change. This isn't one of them. We could do this in our lifetime. It's on our watch and it's working.
Yeah. So the other thing you learned, which this book is just, it's magnificent. It's magnificent. But the other thing you learned, we'll just get them pads and all those things. But that didn't work because
There's no place to dispose of them.
there's no place to dispose of them.
And what do you do the next month? If you have money for pads and you have to choose between pads and food, food wins. And that's true all over the world.
Yes, yes.
Mm.
And so you decided to solve this issue by doing what?
Creating washable pads
Washable pads.
and a curriculum that's practical and engaging to kind of shatter that stigma. Well, that's the good news. The bad news is that I didn't know how to make a pad that lasts month after month. So the design was a little iffy, and I can say that I designed it. They were white pads because pads are white, and they look like a pad because it was a pad. But both of those things, raise your hand if you would like to hang a stained pad in your front yard, and they have such stigma.
Yes.
So the good news is that we've been through 30 iterations of the pad, and today Days for Girls Design holds 2 patents for the innovation created by listening to those we serve all over the world.
Yes, listening to feedback. That
Yep.
is one of our tenets in Toastmasters as well, using our voice, listening to feedback and improving things
Mhm.
from that feedback.
Right?
But you also invited other women to the stage to help them develop their speaking voice.
Oh,
and their
100%.
so can you tell us about that?
Yes. So again and again, even from the first time, solutions need to not be about coming from the outside and fixing things, but rather built together because people support what they create, right? None of us like being told what to do. But when someone invites us, that's a whole different game, right?
Yeah.
So by inviting everyone and having their input, it has been richer and better from the very beginning. Can I share with you one of my favorite moments? It
Yes,
was that
share with
very
us.
first time
Yes.
we were teaching about what a period is and that your bodies are amazing. And one of the women that grew up in that orphanage and was at college was invited to talk about how do you protect yourself? How do you stand up for yourself? You talk to the girls about that. And because it was just 3.5 weeks, we didn't get to rehearse anything. We just kind of revved into the room. So imagine she walks in, she's got this powder blue Kenyan dress on. She looks so beautiful and regal. And she walks in and she goes, if a boy bother you, I tell you what to do. You tell him zip it. I said, just zip it. Like, yeah,
That is catchy. That is catchy.
no one's gonna forget that.
And all the girls cheered.
They just
Yes.
cheered. And from the beginning, so it's always been what we can do together. So here's the power of that. And when you invite someone, it gives them the ability to be the leader. And there are stories in my keynote and in the book about how huge that is. One of my favorites is goat soup. So I'm really giving this away, but you can be on the inside scoop. So goat soup was in Zimbabwe. And we have been in an area that took hours and hours to get there. Long story short, we were going down rough terrain. There was no way we could do the 200 we hoped to do. We had to choose just 75. The other girls are looking in the room, please choose me. Heartbreaking. And so imagine we left the fabric to make the rest of the kits there. And imagine that it's 4 months later, the team members are finally able to go and try to make them. They arrive and they say this fabric is missing. And we're like, what? And they explained that they had made them into these kits. And they said, who could have, if you've ever participated, you can help volunteer at Days for Girls. If you ever had, it's a labor of love. It's a good thing they last up to 7 years because it's a lot of love. So these pads,
Wow.
7 years.
7
guys.
years.
And so here she is, and it's 12-year-old Goatsu with this pink striped shirt. And she says, when they ask how you feel about being part of this, I am no longer an orphan. I am a leader of women.
Wow.
Right?
I am no longer an orphan. I am a leader of women. That is beautiful.
And
That is
that's why invite people, let them be the leader, let them take the lead. They understand things.
Yes.
They can be heard better. They can avoid obstacles. And again, people support what they create. So when you're making a movement, don't
Yes.
try to push your way to the front. Invite people
Oh.
to take pieces and parts. And now you've got a wave.
That is a great segue to reinvite Stefano McGee back to the virtual stage. Stefano is Toastmasters International second vice president. He will be our international president in 2.5 years. And
Congratulations.
we were just when you came, we were just about to dive into another question on the lines of leadership. But let's go back to what you just said, because Stefano, I'd love to hear from you of inviting, stepping back and inviting people to the table of leadership to be leaders. Might you comment on that, please?
Sure. I have a couple examples of that. Many years ago, when I was going to be a district governor, so running the organization in my district, which was Eastern Massachusetts and Rhode Island, there was a convention where when you were looking for the person that was going to take care of your finances, that you kind of looked back and saw who's done this in the past, and you just pick one of those people because they know what they're doing. And I had just been elected, and this woman came up to me, very smartly dressed, and she handed me a resume. We don't do that. She handed me a resume for a nonprofit running in this. And she says, "Hi, my name is Stephanie, and I'm a certified public accountant, and I'm looking to see if I can, manage the books for this nonprofit organization." And I'm like, "I have no idea who you are, but yes, yes, because that is how you grow the pool of leaders. Is you cannot always go back to who you go back to. You have to be willing to say, this person has the credentials. You should bring them into doing things. Another example of that is the second time when I went through doing a district director. It's unusual. I did it for reasons. I learned a lot the second time around, and that is delegation. And a lot of times you don't learn that skill until it's far too late.
That's true.
You try to do it all yourself, and it's hard. Well, we had an opportunity for something had not gone right in the way that we had laid out the organization of our district. And there was a problem that needed to be solved. Now, ordinarily they'd say, "Stefano, this is something that you need to take care of." And I said, "You know what? I'm going to actually go to the local person, the division director, for those folks, you know who that is." And I said, "I'm going to have them figure this out." And she said, no, this is for you to do so. And I said, "No, it's not. I just need to check it. Let me give it to this person." And this, "Do I know what to do?" I'm like, "Yes, you know the area, you know the local area, you know what needs to happen here. Come up with a solution. I'll take a quick look. We'll send it in." And she was shocked that I would give her this. It was a big deal. If we got it wrong, it would be bad for us. She solved the issue. It was in a way that I would never have even thought of on my own. And I sent it in. And from there, she said, "Wow, this person believed in me. I wonder what else I could do." She ran for higher office after that.
Wow.
And that is, that's what you have to do, is you have to say, "You know what? Let me delegate these things to other people, give them a chance to solve it their way, not the way that I say it." Like you said, Celeste, you have to let them succeed the way that they know how, that they want, that they bring themselves to it. When you do that, you're in for a surprise, usually a good one, but you're in for a surprise. And I think that those are a couple examples of you have to do that to be successful, because then those people go on, they learn to do more, they become leaders. You can do less. It's good for everybody.
Yes.
Great examples.
It is a great example. And you may not know this, but you'll know it now, that Celeste was CEO and stepped back to her title of founder. So tell us about that decision of stepping back, that you must have had great confidence in your team to be able to do that.
Well, I believe that when you build an organization, you have to build in succession. And what I mean by that is not ready to step back, but more ready to replicate so it can scale, ready to, if something happens to someone, you can pass the position over because there's a record of this is how we do this position. So starting playbooks, if you will, and having a living history of each position and what we learned. And in this case with the global org, that's a lot of recording of knowledge. And so that included my position. Here's the truth. I didn't plan to step down. That was, I was thinking if you get hit by a bus scenario.
I'm so glad you were not.
That's when you
Lots
win
of
the
her
lottery,
mouth.
Rebecca, not when you get hit by us, when you win the
There you-
lottery.
Lottery.
There you go. No, I just would put that back in the Days for Girls, so that would work. Here's the truth. I just knew in my bones it's time. And I had promised myself long ago that I would never identify with a position to believe that was me, but rather that it's all about the power of we. And I believe that all the Reach Days for Girls has done is because of the power of we, and because I'm willing to let go, right? So when this feeling was just into my toes and up to the top of my head, I was ready. And we had team members who had been trusted, who were amazing, that handoff went smoothly, and they're doing great. And now I get to lean in where I'm strongest, speaking with others about it, promoting the book, sharing and promoting fundraising. And I don't have to be behind the desk for day to day. I get to lean into my strengths and have more time for family. It's a win-win.
Definitely a win-win. And for us too.
Oh, thank you.
Spend more time with Rebecca.
Yeah, I like that plan.
Yeah.
That's a good plan.
Well, we're going to get back to some of the questions that were submitted, and there was one submitted for Stefano from Rika Nair, who's in the room. Hi, Rika. She is Division E Director. Rika asks, how did you stay motivated to continue your leadership journey at Toastmasters?
I think that's related to why I'm still here, right? And it's hard to say. I noticed early on when I joined Toastmasters, I think I joined in 2005. Yeah, July 1st, 2005. On July 1st, 2006, I was president of my club. Not because I had high aspirations, but because nobody else would do it. But what I learned, and I'll mention that in the keynote as well. But what I learned about that is I listened to a lot of people, and while we all had good things to say, there were always people like, well, you know, we don't do these things. We don't do that. Why is this like this? And I learned that I'm kind of one of those people that says, well, what can we do about that? How can we fix that? And surprising to me at the time, a lot of people don't want to be bothered. They just want to complain about it and not do anything about it. And I said, no, we should be able to fix this. And we were able to move the organization forward, that little 17-person organization club, we moved it forward. And then the next year, somebody said, well, you know, you could do this thing called area governor, area director. And I was like, what's that? And they said, well, you get to oversee a few more clubs and help make them better. And I'm like, well, that would be nice. Maybe I can contribute something to a greater good. And it just kind of snowballed from there, Rika, is how can I do more good? How can I listen to the challenges that people are having and try to make a solution happen? You don't have to solve world hunger. I don't have to do what Celeste did. I just have to make it a little bit better than I left it. And for most of the time, if we all did that, the world would be a better place. That's why I'm here, Rika, is I think I can make the organization just a little bit better than when I left it, that people will smile a little bit more, that will have a few more members that are like, you know, I'm glad I spent some time in that organization. I spent 2.5 years and I got so much out of it. That's what it's all about. That's how I stay committed to the organizations. I must make it just a little bit better.
Yes, yes. Could you repeat those few words that you shared with others who were doubting or complaining? What were those few words that you mentioned? You asked, you said, that's interesting, or
like, how do we fix that? How do we make it better?
Yeah, how do we make it better? So you threw
better?
the question back at them. They complained. That's a really good one.
That's
a really good one.
Very good.
How do we make it better? And they might not have an answer. And okay, well, if you don't have an answer, then maybe you can stop complaining now.
Do something about it. You don't have to, like I said, oh, well, that sounds too big of a problem to fix. Well, make it smaller, make it something that you can affect. And that's how you get to running an entire organization. You have to say, where can I make, what is it? Think locally, act globally. That's exactly what it's about, is what can I influence in my sphere? And then go from there.
Yes.
100%.
100%. I'm wondering, Sarah, do we have any questions that came up in the chat? I do have many more, but for those who came today,
We
might be.
do.
Okay, good.
We have kind of an add-on to Rekha's question of also what motivates you to stay in Toastmasters and what surprises you in the role. I'm curious to know that too.
Oh, it's what's surprising to me is what should be surprising to you, which is you're still here. That's surprising. I mean, look at the organization and what we've been through over the past few years. The pandemic really took a lot of members out. People rethought things in their life, reshuffled things. And for thousands of members, Toastmasters wasn't a part of that. Part of that is Toastmasters. Part of that is just the situation that's out there. But you all are still here, and you all still don't get paid. I don't. We still don't get paid. And yet you find time during your workday, nights, weekends to show up and do the work that's necessary to keep a nonprofit that doesn't pay you going. That continues to surprise me. But at the same time, I'm saying this and I'm doing it. And it should surprise you because you might, if you think about it, that's crazy, but you are also doing it. So that is what surprises me, but also pleases me is the passion that we have for this program. We see the effects that we have, and it makes us, I would say that we continue doing it because it makes us feel good about ourselves and others. And it's really weird in 2024 that we still have those kinds of organizations that just say, oh yeah, I do this out of the goodness of my heart. I pay to do this job.
I pay to do this. Yes, yes.
You're a Toastmasters, you pay to do this job.
Yes, yes. A little bit for a lot in return, by the way. It's a great ROI, isn't it? Celeste, piggybacking on that question of volunteering, people doing things that they are not paid to do, which you've had hundreds and hundreds of volunteers.
Yes.
Tell us maybe one of your thousands of volunteers. Tell us about at least one of those volunteer stories.
So all over the world, we have an estimated 70,000 volunteers.
70,000 volunteers.
In Zimbabwe, we were told nobody volunteers in Zimbabwe. They're just so close to the cusp of poverty. There's no way they can afford to do it. And we had a woman who reported she was going to do the education far into the villages on her own. And we said, how are you doing that? And she said, well, I just skip a few meals and then I can afford the bus to get there. And she needed antiretroviral meds. If you're not eating, they're not as effective. So she literally was risking her life to volunteer because it meant so much to her, right? Which is really, she was one of the inspirations to our enterprise program, which is where people do Days for Girls program, but people buy kits from them, NGOs, local people. And so she was really one of the inspirations, because how do you help someone that go to those links be able to afford to do it and not sacrifice in that way?
Right.
So and in my opinion, here's the honest truth. The best employees Days for Girls has ever had were volunteers first. And honestly, our volunteers work harder than you are legally allowed to have a employee work. Right. Seriously. And my problem was not to get people, because people go, you can't trust people with that role. It's so much responsibility. What if they drop the ball? The problem I saw all over the world wasn't would they drop the ball, but how do I convince them to take time off? No, for real. Right? And I think it has to do with purpose.
Yeah.
When you found one of your purposes, a place where your energy and skills can step up and make a difference, it isn't a rock you're pulling. It's a sail that lifts you. And volunteering, when it's a match for your skills and your passion, it's just a fire starter for energy. And that is priceless.
Fire starter. I love that. Fire starter. Stefano, like when you talk about that you were a guest in a club for 6 months, but they were helping to start that little fire in you. Your wife was fanning the flame, right? And you're like, it's getting hot in here. I guess I'll give a speech now. And pay to do it, in fact, right?
Definitely.
Oh, that's
definitely.
great. That's great. We haven't talked about, we talked a little bit about the Air Force, but I just want to check on the time. I left when
My bad.
when
We
Celeste
have-
came in, I left my phone outside. So
We have 13 minutes left. I do have one more question
Okay,
from the
please.
chat.
thank you.
I think it can be turned into a question for both, but it is worded towards Toastmasters
Okay.
in mind. Toastmasters advertises leadership development and public speaking, which critical thinking is definitely a needed skill in leaders. It is not promoted much in Toastmasters. Why is that? This is from Peter Horn. He's our Division C director. Thank you, Peter, for this question.
I'm going to take a stab at that one. I would think that it's a marketing thing. I don't know that anybody looks to join a organization that will help with their critical thinking, but it's certainly a byproduct of the process when it's done well. I think you might have also mentioned like listening. I'm going to join an organization that teaches me how to listen. It's important to Toastmasters, but I think what people are searching for, because listening, if you believe in the 2 ears, 1 mouth thing, right? People are looking to improve themselves and they're like, well, I need to be better at public speaking and leadership. It helps me do things, but you need those other skills to be a good leader, to be able to listen. So, I mean, that would be my guess, is that people are always searching for, we're marketing toward what people are searching for, and the other stuff comes as gravy, if you will. There's a North American audience, so I can say things like that.
Yeah. Do we have some vegan gravy?
Of course we do.
Okay, good. With plenty of mushrooms and onions. Okay. I wanted to share along the lines of critical thinking. I wanted to take your book and show the cover here. It takes a lot of critical thinking to publish a book, especially one. Look how thick this is. And each chapter is absolutely gripping. Now, I don't personally have a desire to publish a big book, but I've not done what you've done and perhaps never will. Could you take us through the first day where you said, this needs to be a book, and the process of thinking that you went through, your diligence?
Yes.
How the times that you might have said to yourself, I don't know if I can do it.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And just take us through that journey a little bit.
So thank you for that question. I actually knew I needed to write it because the stories were so powerful. It's like you don't have time to share in a keynote, like the amazing background of something. But so I was recording that and I was gathering evidence of the impact. And truly, this book isn't just about Days for Girls. It's about the truth that when we come together, miracles can happen, powerful things can happen, and things that nobody thinks can happen. Like when Days for Girls started, people said, nobody's going to talk about periods. You're never going to make headway. And I actually get asked to speak somewhere. They'd say, you're a strong writer. I mean, strong writer, that too, a strong speaker. And then they would cancel when they found out what I was talking about. So this was like an uphill. So speaking of messaging, we had to do the same thing. What do people want to talk about? We had a Guinness World Record for most pair of panties worn at once on Valentine's Day because and the news came, it was like, how do we get people to talk about this? And little by little, more and more did. And writing the book was an exercise in patience and tenacity. And honestly, it took me 4 years. Don't take 4 years. It just took me that because I really wanted it to capture the picture, like being there, the picture of it, the smells of it, the feeling of it, every single scene. And frankly, how do you choose which stories? That was the hardest part.
Oh, yeah.
And then, but the other piece was, I didn't want to put my story in there. I tried everything I could. And a friend who's a publisher said, I sent her the first version. So by the way, Today it is, it was an Amazon #1 bestseller by day 2, Amazon #1 audio by day 5, and it was just nominated for the Pacific Northwest Book Award.
Oh,
So
gosh.
yeah, it was so fun. And
Wow.
the first edition is almost sold out.
Oh,
So what's really, really, and it's so fun to get everyone's notes. So it's worth it. And when I sent her the first version, all she did, she's a publisher, but a small one. She wanted me to be with a bigger one. All she did was email back, call me. And so I called her and she said, I'm like, you don't get to do that. You don't get to say. And so, spoiler, I was a 5-year-old girl who was homeless and hungry walking around this path, ... which taught me the empathy and how to lean in and how to know everybody's matter wisdom. You don't come in telling somebody how they should get it right and that they're wrong. Like I learned that super early. And there's a story about that. And then ... Kenya, you don't get to do that. You lead in a unique way.
yes.
You're like, we need to understand.
Oh, so the original version, you had a little blurb about the 5-year-old girl, and then all of a sudden you're in Kenya
Yeah.
doing this great thing. And
Yes.
she's like, that's not a book. That's
Right.
not this book.
Yeah.
And so she made you go back and do the
I did.
work.
And I
That's
wrestled with
that's the hard work, as we
Right.
all know as storytellers. That's
And how do you do that without what I call navel gazing? Do you use this term? Do you use this term?
navel gazing.
Yeah. So it's like when you that you're just so into your own angst, right? That you're like, come with me and see how awful it was. How do you do it without dwelling on your
Yeah.
inner turmoil, right? How do you do it in a way that takes them there, but really shows them the breadcrumbs of hope and resilience and how it adds up sometimes
Yeah.
the things we're weakest at are actually our superpowers. And we don't believe that in the moment, but you look back sometimes and you can see the waves of it all coming together.
Yes.
And
yes.
so this book is proof of that and filled with hope. I recently had a woman that said, this book is, oh no, just went out of my head. This book, makes you a prisoner of hope.
Ooh, a prisoner of hope.
Yeah.
That's your next book title, by the way. I'm a prisoner of hope. There's a song. I'll write the song. See, now something just flew out of my head. Oh, I know, when you said navel gazing
Yeah.
and this is what we talk about as speakers.
Sorry, guys.
She's supposed to, of not doing therapy on the stage. That's the
Yes.
equivalent for us. We don't do therapy on stage. We heal first, and then our lessons learned become the message for others. And that's
Mhm.
exactly what you did. That's what
Right?
you did. So Stefano, what lesson, what key lesson, painful lesson have you taken from your past that has been a valuable message that you now share or have shared?
The last time I asked this or what I answered something like this, I brought up, so I work at Harvard Business Publishing. I've got a department now of 10 engineers that do various things, keeping websites up and running and building new things in the cloud. And for the most part, I think I've retained all but 2 employees. I've been doing pretty well since I've been there. But one of the ones only lasted 9 months. And we hired a young woman right out of college and brought her into the group. And she stayed about 9 months. And she ended up leaving. And depending on who you ask, it was either something I had no control over, but I still took ownership of it. I don't think that our group, specifically me, did a good enough job of engaging with her to get her to be part of the team, which there was a very, how shall we say, large range in age differences, let's say. So it was hard to try to integrate her into the team, but that's my job. And that comes from the military, is my job is to make sure that my team is integrated no matter who is on my team. And I wasn't as successful on that as I would have liked, because she left and she ended up going to a company where she could work with younger folks, which is awesome. So she was happy. But I was like, next time we have to make sure that I get my next employee more integrated, more into things. And so that was something that I've learned is whenever you're building a team, whenever you bring somebody new on the team, you must work extra hard to integrate them into the operations, to make them feel as though the team is a home for them and that they are peers. They're among equals, regardless of how long you've been there. You may be skilled in this versus that, doesn't matter. We are equals. We are on the same team. Make them feel at home, because that's what makes them stay, is that feeling of I am part of the team. So that's I like to say that's a feeling that I had, and I'm trying to make it better. Just gotta make it better.
That's great. It's a great message for all of us, whether we're talking about club, leadership in a club, nonprofit organization, a guest in our home, even.
Yes.
Even if it's a stray dog, I'm going to make them feel right at home. And I do.
She does.
Okay. Final thoughts. We are rounding the corner to our last couple minutes. And I'd like to first extend to Celeste. What is a final thought or message? You'll be seeing everybody again at the conference, but between now and then, what's a parting message from you?
Oh, pay attention to the wins that you make. Pay attention to how people feel when they're around you, because sometimes you've just done the most wonderful thing and you don't even notice. When we consider that we failed, we consider that we weren't strong enough, but if instead you get curious about the difference you're making and just be more interested in others and the interaction than worried about being perfect or how you do things, between now and then, just pay attention to how you are making a difference. And I promise when we do get together, we'll talk more about that.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you so much. Stefano, last message from you.
And Celeste, I'm so thankful that you went first, because then I can say, well, I can adapt something to work with that. And that is that you don't need to solve it all today. You do just need to leave it better than you found it. And that is the most important thing, is don't expect yourself to come in and change everything in 1 week or 1 year, but you do have to make it better than when you found it. And it's not that you have to be better than the person before you. The person before you expects you to be better than they are, because that means that you're moving the organization forward. So don't try to solve it all in 1 day, but do try to be just a little bit better than when you left it.
Oh, that's a great way to end. Well, it has been my pleasure to facilitate this fireside chat today. Sarah Ranchler, would you like to say a parting word as our PQD?
This was just such a treat. Thank you so much for being here. And I cannot wait to share this with our members, because you had so many inspirational thoughts and ideas just in this hour. I cannot wait to see what you do with each of you having an hour keynote. Like, that's going to be awesome. So thank you for being here.
And Celeste is going to give away at the conference a copy of her book that could be on your bookshelf. So we'll see you there. Buy your ticket today.